No, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam v'yorei pri hagofen. Chaim Lebrocha. To fulfilling the Rebbe's bakosha nafshis, the sole request of making kinusei achdus, gatherings of unity amongst the entire Jewish nation. And this chus itself, it should be already bringing the immediate revelation of the Rebbe Shlita Melech Ha'Moshiach on a good and revealed basis, with happiness and joy of the heart, in the manner of peace and tranquility, and main thing, it should be teichef miyad mamash, immediately now. Chaim lebrocha, Yechi Adoneinu Moreinu v'Rabbeinu HaMelech Ha'Moshiach le'olam v'ed. So tonight, since it's the beginning of the Shleishis Yemei Hagbola, the beginning of the 3 days of preparation before the holiday of Shavuos.
You want a guitar?
Huh?
You want a guitar?
Not yet. That's for weddings. You can, I think that you can have klezmer, but not yet. Despite the fact that we're not going to have musical live music, but maybe we'll have at least double in the in regard to the contents of the stories. We'll have, instead of one, we'll have two. But in regard to the whole concept of Golus and Geula, the idea of exile and the end of exile, the beginning of Geula, the beginning of the redemption, and the redemption, even though we don't have the ability to see it yet, but it's here and we're in it. So there's told a story of a person, a Yid, in the Alter Heim, that they had a kretschmer, he had a pundak, he had a tavern, and periodically he would have to go and bring the taxes or his rent. He would have to bring Miriam. Who?
Go ahead.
Okay, no, I just wanted to know who's there. He would periodically have to bring the rent to the poritz, to the land baron. And it happened, it was very common that when he would come and he didn't have the money, so he had to have a grace period in order to have a lengthened amount of time to gather together the money. And on one of these occasions, when he would come and he wouldn't have the money, the land baron would be very stern with him, but nevertheless, the land baron was an Oyev Yisrael. He liked Jews. That's also something very not common. He liked Jews, and he would give him the grace period until he was able to go and to gather together the money, and then he would be paid. On one of the times where, again, he didn't have the money at hand, he dragged himself over to the poritz because it was a very not convenient situation to be in. And as he knocks on the door opens, and he finds out that the poritz, the land baron, isn't home. He's not there. But who is handling the business instead of him? The accountant. Now, the accountant was a goy, and he was a Seina Yisrael. He really hated Yidden, and when the accountant heard that the Jew doesn't have money to go and to pay for his tavern, he got very upset, and he showed a very angry face. And here he said to himself, he has his opportunity to go and to take revenge on the Jewish nation. Upon this Jew, he quickly asked that the land baron's whip be handed to him. He took the whip, and he told the Jew to pull up his shirt, and he whipped the Jew once, twice, 3, 5 times. He whipped the Jew. After he whipped the Jew, he said, "Now go home and make sure you have the money as soon as possible." That was a knas. That was the lashing was just a knas. And he went home. He comes into the door, and his wife sees him, and he has a fallen face, and he has tears in his eyes from the pain. And he tells his wife what happened. And his wife said, "Listen, don't worry. Everything's going to be okay. Hashem will help. We'll have the money. Everything will be okay." And later on, actually, as always, Hashem helped, and they had the money. He took the money, and he went back to the land baron's home. He came to the land baron's home. The land baron was already back from his trip. When he came in and he gave the money to the land baron, so he also, on the same occasion, told the land baron of his experience with the accountant beforehand. The land baron said, "What? The accountant gave you lashes? How dare him?" And he went and he called for the accountant to come before him. And the accountant came. And then the land baron said, I'm going to penalize you for every time you lash this Jew 1,000 rubles. That was the penalty. So altogether, he had to pay this Jew 5,000 rubles. Pretty big sum. It was even more than the money, maybe even more than a triple of the money that he had to pay for the rental of his tavern. He received the money, and he thanks the land baron, and he goes back home. And again, as he comes into the door, he has a very long, fallen face, and he has tears in his eyes. And his wife looks at him, and she says, "Wow, what happened? Why such a long face? Why tears again? What, did they give you lashes again? You paid already." He says, "Yeah, I know I paid." So he says, "So what's going on?" So he said, "Not only did they not give me lashes, they gave me 5,000 ruble. His wife said, 5,000 ruble? Are you kidding? Wow, you should be singing and dancing. Why tears in your eyes?" He said, I'm thinking about when the accountant gave me the lashes, and I'm saying, why didn't he give me more lashes? This is another way. This is another way of looking at the Gullus. And the Rebbe says very, very clearly, when we're looking at the Gullus, when we come immediately now to the Geula, so we're going to say the famous verse from the Novi, Oitcho Hashem ki onaftabi. We will thank Hashem for chastising us, for punishing us during the days of the Galut. But the fact of the matter is, this is going to be after the fact. During the time right now that we're going through, and we're going through the most very difficult and challenging times throughout the entire history of the Jewish nation, a Jew is supposed to go into demand. We are required to go into demand from Hashem that we should have the Geula Hashlema V'Amitis. And then until the Geula comes, immediately now, so we should have all these challenges removed. We shouldn't have any pain and no anguish. And there should be no Jew that should have any pain or anguish, let alone Jews that are coming to harm, like we heard this morning. There's still soldiers that are being Rahman al-Zan, and soldiers that are being attacked. Hashem should watch over us, and the Jews all over the world. This is something that we have our business, and it's our responsibility to demand from Hashem that all these difficulties, all these challenges, and all these turmoils should be removed immediately. And we should be able to have the Geula Shleilach Teichet Miyad Mammesh. So we're going to have a double story in honor of Erev Shavuos, Shleishes Yimei Hagbola. There's another story that's told when we're talking about tzaddikim. So the two great brothers, we have Rav Zusha of Anapoli and Rav Elimelech of Lezhinsk. About Rav Elimelech, Melech, he was that was his kinoi, that was his nickname. So it's told that after the passing of Rav Elimelech of Lezhinsk, so all the wagon drivers got together, and they said, wow, we know that there's a wagon driver that lives in this town, and he was regularly, every week, he was by Rav Elimelech. He was at Lezhinsk. He was driving people in his wagon to Lezhinsk, and he must have some amazing, fascinating stories to tell us about Rav Melech. So they got together and they did their homework to find out exactly where this Jew lived. They were told that he was in his elderly years, and they came, a whole group of wagon drivers, to this town, and they started to ask about this person. His name was Shmerel. As the story goes, they asked him, where does Shmerel live? And people said, they said Rav Shmerel. They gave him a title, and the people said, Rav Shmerel, we're not sure exactly who you're talking about. Rav Shmerel. He said, no, Shmerel, the wagon driver. The wagon driver. Okay, the retired wagon driver. He lives at the end of the town. As most of the stories go, they usually live at the end of the town, these people. They are hidden, concealed. No one knows about them. No one heard about them. They go to the Rav Shmerel's home, knock on the door, and to the door comes Rebbe Shmerel. And she asks, what are they doing here? You're coming to fundraise? We don't have any money. So they said, no, we wanted to sit down to have a get together and to with your husband, because we know that he went to Luzhinsk on a regular basis. We want to hear stories of Rav Melech of Luzhinsk. So she said, stories? I don't know, but I'll ask him. So he said, okay, if they're already here at our door, so let them in. They come in, they sit down, and they're looking at him. He's really in his elderly years. They ask him, how old are you? He says, 110. It's a pretty ripe age to reach 110 years. And they said, well, we heard that you've been driving to people to Luzhinsk regular basis. Do you tell us stories from Rav Elimelech of Luzhinsk? He says, who? So he said, Rav Melech of Luzhinsk. This is the place where you were driving the people to be. He says, I don't know any stories of Rav Elimelech of Luzhinsk. So you have to know stories. You've been there so many times, during such a long period of time. You must have had stories. You must have had an experience. He says, no, I don't know. I really don't know what you're talking about. I can't help you. So they're looking, they schlepped all the way to this guy's house, to Shmerel's house, to hear stories. They say, listen, we plead, please, you must have one story. So he thinks and he says, you know what? Yeah, one story I have. So they say, great. So he starts telling the story. He says, once I took people to Luzhinsk for Shabbos. And the way it used to work, I would take the people to Luzhinsk, and then I would go to my own, to a tavern. That's where I would spend the Shabbos. Once a Shabbos, I would come and I would pick them up with my horse and wagon, which was parked already by Rav Elimelech of Luzhinsk. I would take them home. One Motzei Shabbos, I come and I see that my horse and wagon are gone, disappeared, not to be seen. And he's thinking, what? How could such a thing happen? Such chutzpah. I bring people, how? So he starts asking around, and people are saying, no, we didn't hear it. We didn't see any horse and wagon. We don't know what you're talking about. Finally, the people come to him and he says, listen, well, if you want to know where your horse and wagon are, so go to the tzaddik, go to Rav Melech. He'll tell you where your horse and wagon are. So he was in such a predicament that he didn't have anything else to do, so he decided, okay, he'll go and he'll ask the Rav Melech. Goes to Rav Melech receives him. He tells him the story, and Rav Melech hears that he lost his horse and wagon, and all of a sudden he goes into a deep contemplation, closes his eyes, finally opens his eyes, and he says, listen, go to this road in the town, to the third house, and in back of the third house, you'll find your horse and wagon. No, the people said, the wagon drivers, no, did you find your horse and wagon? He says, yeah. So he says, well, so what do you say? They wanted to hear, the hispilus, your excitement. He thinks a moment and he says, listen, to say that he was the one that stole my horse and wagon, it's difficult to say. He looks like he's a decent guy. To go on to, but I have a very strong chashash. I have a very strong suspicion that he was from the chabura. He was from the crowd that had to do with the disappearing of the horse and wagon. No one could understand this guy, and this is exactly what it was. One of the stories that were told actually in the Shabbos Achdus in Levi Yitzchak in Canaan, in the Chabad Shul. That this is what we are going through right now, all through the generations, when we're seeing miracle after miracle, nace after nace. People see miracles, and they live in a situation where they don't acknowledge the miracles. They don't acknowledge that Hashem is doing miracles. We went through this terrible period of time recently, in the last 2 weeks, and the aftermath is there were over 1,500 missiles that were shot, maybe even more, that were shot from Gaza to Eretz Yisrael, and 60% of the missiles landed in empty space, empty fields, empty spaces where there were no people, they were not popularized. This is unbelievable. It's impossible to understand. And there was a missile that landed in Ramat Gan. The person, Rabbi Vilshansky's, one of Rabbi Vilshansky's sons of Laser Vilshansky he said, in Ramat Gan, a missile fell, and the missile fell in an open area. He said, I had to go to a gvir, he says. I had to go to a wealthy person in Ramat Gan, and I had to be there at a certain time. And I came on time, but I'm looking for a parking place, and I'm circling and circling. I was circling for half an hour. I couldn't find a parking space. And finally, when I decided where I'm going to park, and he said, not to tell anyone, but it wasn't even a kosher parking space. It was like, some place that you're not supposed to park. Until I get up to the office, it was 40 minutes. I tell the gvir right out, face to face, I tell him, I don't understand. How could it be that there was a missile that was shot to Ramat Gan and it landed in empty space? There's no space for a needle to fit between each car over here. That's how great the miracles that we're talking about are. And this is something that it's important, first and foremost, the Rebbe says, to acknowledge the miracle, to know about the miracle. And this is just a drop in the bucket of the miracles that we know about, let alone the miracles that we don't know, that we didn't hear yet, or we're going to hear. But the matter is that when we go and we publicize these miracles, we publicize these nisim, these wonders, niflois, we're in the year of Tafshin Pei Gimel, Tehei Shnas Plois Gedelis, great wonders. This is what hastens and brings faster, and immediately now, the biggest miracle, which is the revelation of the Rebbe Shlita Melech Ha'Moshiach on a good and revealed basis, mitoch simcha v'tul vav, in a happy and joyous manner, and should be with peace and tranquility, as we mentioned at the beginning. And the main thing is, should be teichef miyad mammesh, 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 immediately now. Chi Adonenu Moreinu v'Rabbeinu HaMelech Ha'Moshiach Chai v'Kayim Le'elam Voed. Amen.